Hello, welcome friends. Welcome to Lessons from Digital Crafting. This is our podcast where we meet with founders to review their journey, developing an early idea into a real product launch. My name is Michelle Reed with Z1 Digital Studio, and I'll be your host along with Hector Giner, founder of Z1. And today we are joined by Chiara Pastorelli. She is the founder of Applicate, a mobile app designed for personalized and smart labeling of images from your iPhone. So today, we're going to dive into the ins and outs of building an innovative app from scratch as a sole founder. So thank you. Hello, Hector. Hi, Chiara.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So happy to see you. Why don't we begin by sharing more about what Applicate is? So tell us a little bit about the most interesting features and who is this product really for?
So I believe primarily that people should be able to organize their images and screenshots on how they feel about it personally, what it means to them, not algorithmically or in any other way, but a personal message. Applicate was created to organize, label, save, and find essentially your photographs. We all know the frustrations of what it's like to have that photo that you took so you wouldn't forget and then not be able to have it in the moment that you need it. So to give you an example, how you would use Applicate, you might be online and you might come across a beautiful outfit and you particularly love the shoes. So traditionally, you would take a screenshot and then that screenshot would go into a screenshot folder with thousands of other images. So how are you going to find those shoes again? It's virtually impossible unless you're happy to keep scrolling. And Applicate will do that for you. It will suggest a label and you can save that. That label is personal to you. So in this example, you could save the whole outfit and you could save the bag, the shoes, the sunglasses, and Applicate will recognize the website and suggest it through machine learning and create a folder from it. So as an example, all your Zara outfits could be in one folder. So the ability to create these personalized, effortless folders is what makes Applicate really unique. Basically, traditional photo albums are finished. Applicate will allow the user to add collaborators to the folders, the smart folders, with various permissions for editing. You can also edit and filter and add text to all your images. And I think it's really important to highlight as well that for non-visual people, there are tons of tools out there, lots of productivity tools, countless, like tasks lists and reminders. And I think Applicate is kind of that, but for visual people and creative people.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting, smart. Right? Like how these trends of more and more content and also the ubiquity where you are with your smartphone in some place, like waiting for a coffee or something, you see something and it's like, oh, I don't want to miss this thing that I just found, but I'm not sure where to put it, right? So exactly. If you're a system-driven person, sometimes it's like some sort of a niche, like, oh, I need to organize everything. So having tools to feel more organized are always a good thing, right? And definitely a thing we need. Yeah.
For sure.
Chiara, you come to us before becoming a product owner and launching your own business from a background in fashion buying. Can you give us a little insight into what were the pains or the problems that you were feeling that you couldn't find a solution for that motivated you to create something?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, my background is completely non-tech. I was a buyer, and being a buyer is like the epicenter of like mixing creativity and structure and organization fundamentally. You can be a fantastic designer, and if you're not business savvy or organized, you will not succeed in the buying world. It's very glamorous on one hand, but it very fast paced and extremely ruthless. You know, inspiration and organization are the key of that type of career. So, you know, when I first started my career as a trainee buyer, we used to go to Paris and Milan and New York, and we would go to fashion shows and trade shows. And we would be looking for inspiration from fabrics and color palettes. We'd buy lots of samples and take tons of images, anything that would capture our imagination. And we would spend, when we got back, we would spend hours categorizing and labeling by hand in like, you know, with Post-it notes and stickers to all these samples, which is obviously, you know, really not inefficient and very, very time consuming. And, you know, it would take us days. And then these images that we had would then be shared with buyers, managers, suppliers, and, you know, just a whole host of people that looked in the images in different ways. And the same image can mean different things to different people. And that's where the whole concept started from. Because, for example, a coat, you might look at a coat and someone might be interested in the fabric or the color or the shape. And what's special about Applicate is that if I just cut out.
No, you're with us.
Yeah. Oh, that's so weird. Sorry. So what's special about Applicate is that that same image can be simultaneously in both folders. So the same coat can be in one folder for fabric and in another folder for design. And that's where the ease of it all lies.
Or maybe you might have even forgotten why you snapped an image of that piece in the first place.
Exactly.
You should haven't. Yeah, it's interesting also like how we are, you know, when building products, like trying to solve a specific problem with that we're having our professional lives, right, in different industries, right, and how there are sometimes we don't find specifically what we are looking for. There are like some apps that do something similar, or iOS, like the iOS camera roll, if you can organize everything. But it's interesting also to have that knowledge from a specific market and trying to apply it to a product, right?
Yes, exactly. And it was only really afterwards that it kind of became, I realized how organic it was to most people's problems. It's not just a buying problem. And, you know, anyone with tons of images essentially were converting images to words, but they're special words.
Yeah. I find it fascinating that you've been the one to make a first move, or maybe a thoughtful move, to try and offer something to this huge community of buyers, and as you said, other industries, to try and find a more workable, usable solution. So I have to wonder, what is unique and special, or maybe what could have boosted you in the direction to take those first steps? Now, I am in Canada. Hector is in the south of Spain. You spend the majority of your time in Dubai. I know a little bit about the community in Dubai, but can you share more? Was that an inspiring, motivating community of people who are trying to solve problems in new ways around Dubai?
Yeah, very, very much so. Dubai is definitely a very special place. The people come to Dubai. I think I've told you before that really in Dubai, you don't even, there's jobs that you've never even thought existed. And I always find it really interesting asking people like what brought them to Dubai. It's one of those places which is kind of contagious. The can-do attitude is everywhere. And the government has put the ease of business at the forefront of their policies. So that's both, you know, the incubators and accelerators, like Applicate is part of a free zone, which is an entirely unique concept to Dubai. And it's just people come there to fulfill their dreams, and it's really contagious, the whole vibe.
Had anybody in your peer group or your social circle attempted to launch an app before?
Not an app specific. Well, actually, even in sports, I mean, I've got friends who are in the sporting industry who have done apps that are daily apps that they would use. But in general, I've got friends that have launched all kinds of businesses,
Sure.
And are doing really well for themselves. We had a funny situation a few years ago where they had lots of queuing at the petrol stations. So someone decided to create an app that would deliver the petrol to the home. And so now you open your garage and it's delivered to the house.
Solutions for all kinds of problems.
I have a question to that, like, and that probably could be useful for the audience, is that how do you think like that ecosystem, or at least the validation or the motivation to do things, has impacted your journey? I mean, you already had this idea from the past, from your experience in that, and you're already thinking about the idea of building this. Do you have some sort of an opinion on how this type of ecosystems can empower people to take risks, or you think it's more about something that you had inherently about this product?
I think that Dubai has a really good setup, essentially, and it does make you feel that the world is your oyster, and it does make you feel that you can do anything, because you see it every day. People are launching new businesses, and also, some people might look at me and think, well, you've got no tech background, but I had a practical problem, and that was all I looked to do, is just be true to my vision and solve the problem. So I don't think you always have to have like the background that you think you might to do certain roles.
Can you recall, if you think back, because it's been a couple of years now, can you recall the first things that you explored when you set out to find who can help me make this solution?
Yes, I mean, I knew that it had. I never really thought of the app as an app itself. I've always thought of it as a design tool, like I know I've said this before about the productivity, and it had to look beautiful. I didn't want it to be just a simple product. I wanted it to look simple, but I wanted it to, fulfill, not just be able to find images, but be able to save them, be able to, incorporate everything into a full 360 solution. And so when I was looking for the, different ways to save and organize, I was really surprised that nobody else was doing it. I couldn't believe it. And, one of the first tasks when we worked together with Z1 was, the looking at the market and looking at possible competitors. And I was so relieved to find out that there were none. It was something that was really, a problem that really needed to be solved. It wasn't even being done badly.
Yeah.
Before we got to meet you, I know that you spoke to a plethora of people, developers, very large agencies with big practices, and then you landed with us. Can you recall what stuck out to you? I'm sure you had loads of options available to you in Dubai, but you landed with this multi-international group of people working remotely.
Yeah, I actually loved that. I think that was definitely a selling point, the fact that it was multi-international and lots of different people. I was really looking for somebody that was a partner, because, I came when it was just a tiny little idea, not even a name, nothing. And I really needed somebody that I knew I could collaborate with. It wasn't just about instructions and, results. It was very much about a collab and trusting somebody. And I think really Hector really understood the why behind everything. And that made me immediately, trust the team and the process. And I felt really confident quite quickly that the engineering and the design team could come together to create something that was quite complicated and make it look beautiful and simple in the same time. So I was immediately in good hands.
And maybe I'll share as well, when we met you, you were completely the type of person that we love to work with, somebody who has a very clear sense of the market that they want to work within, a really personal attachment to the problem to be solved, and a clear vision of what that solution could look like. It's more of a user experience approach, but you needed some support in the technical aspect. What is feasible and how can we bring this forward? And then also designing something, and maybe we get a little bit more technical. I remember in the first days when we were planning out, sort of boxing around what a first version could look like, you commented that the app essentially will be a utility app, but you didn't want it to look that way because we would be proposing a product for people who are super visual and in fashion. So do you think that we achieved that outcome in design together?
For sure, definitely. The feedback we've had has been the design is at the forefront of the app. It's phenomenal. I think the main focus for me was, for the launch of the product, was just to keep true to my vision. Of course, there were compromises along the way. Of course, there are going to be. I think being obsessive about staying true to my vision. We spent a huge amount of time thinking about how users would engage with the app, and I think it's obviously difficult, as I said before, to make something quite complicated look super easy, and that actually making the experience great for the user was the priority, and making obviously a really engaging flow. So I think we've achieved that.
Very good. Hector, maybe share a little bit more from your perspective, more technical. What are some of those considerations where we want something that is complex and also limited by what can be done feasibly within the confines of iOS, but also how do we think about the design to make it look and feel beautiful?
Yeah, well, the first thing to note is that, depending on the industry or market where you want to launch a product, but the market right now overall is very competitive, right? So design is very important because especially in consumer products, but also in productivity or B2B products, the decisions are made very rapidly there are like some people that say is in seconds, right? The first steps on the app, the first steps of watching a video or scanning through the website, right? You are making the decision already, right? So it's very important to define a killer feature, to define something that you're solving a real problem, because honestly, that's more for the engagement level down the line, but also pay attention to create that level of usability and experience that is very important for make users to feel also that product or that app, it's part of their lives, right? So it's something that we have been always trying to balance perfectly. At step one is the challenge, I would say, right? Because sometimes you can go hyper technical or you can go hyper design driven, but the difficult part is to meet in the middle and trying to find a good balance of both and be effective, right? Especially, as you said, when you are working in the constraints of iOS or another framework or another system, right? And actually right now we are seeing that trend in the design community about, what are the constraints, for example, on designing products for the new AI age, right? Like how we are using new patterns. For I think it's the same for every single product. Like it's important to find that balance and makes the users feel that product is part of their lives from now on, right? So that's probably the huge challenge, but more and more the market is very crowded, and it's an investment that is worth to be made. Yeah.
In parallel with crafting a product that gets deeply into someone's life, there's another side of this for consideration where the nature of this product is accessing and managing data and images on somebody's personal device. And so this product had to be thoughtful about how to request access and consider user privacy, which I think is probably more sensitive than ever before. So maybe each of you could share more about how did we take that into consideration? Did we use any specific tools to manage privacy and user data?
You want to start?
I'll say go.
Yeah. No, yeah, by design, I think it's important. Like, if we start more than in the technical level, it's important to start at the product strategy level or design level, right? Like, in every single product that is connected to some privacy potential issues, or not only thinking about breaches, it's also thinking about the trust that you want to build with the users, right? Like you have to justify in some way why do you need some information, or why do you need access to you, right? That's part of, even if there were no breaches, right? So I think it's important to approach that challenge from the design and the product strategy first, and then also having the advisory on the tech side in order to confirm what's feasible and not, and make decisions around that. I would say that by default, every privacy issue is something that we can solve by design, because it's a way of, like using the right narrative, teaching the user how you're going to be managing things, and even sometimes it's better to feel more approachable and even less technical, and make the user feel that they have control over what's happening, right? For example, I something I have been seeing in a ton of products is like, when you are, for example, I don't know, like some social element that you're publishing or sharing, right, with the network, you make the decision by default if you want to make privacy first or public first, and allowing the user to set up if they want it to be public by default or private by default, right? So those are decisions that are around privacy, and the same for accessing information, right? The last comment in that's like, for example, Apple is doing like a lot of progress in that field, and encouraging or enforcing developers to do more and more, or to follow more patterns about accessing and asking and all their stuff, and that's a good practice for sure. But it's also something that we have to consider by default, because it's part, I would say that it's part even from the product marketing, right? Like how you talk about the potential privacy issues.
Yeah, and the privacy has always been at the heart of the app. Photographs are our most personal, precious items, and they're in your phones. And one of the things that I think is really important is that, as you say, we don't have any adverts or anything like that. We don't ask for any personal data. We don't really care who you are. We don't need any of that information. And obviously, it's not the easiest way to build a product, but I think that the way that we did it was really consistent with our values. And the main thing is I want people to realize it's safe. And our service is our product, not customer data.
Sure, that's an important distinction. Because I can recall advice that's come to me in other situations where if you're not paying for that product, then you are the product. And some people don't realize that. And I think in this case, what's important to communicate to users is that this is their product. Their use of it is not your product. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, when we're talking about design ethics, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that that's not only dark patterns, right? It's also something that is connected to even the business model, right? Similar to what Chiara is just saying, right? Like, the best way to defend or to position yourself in some values is to also explain how do you make money, right? Because it's how you can position yourself in a different place, and not nurturing that type of conspiracy of, oh, what are they doing with my data, right? If you say like, okay, no, I mean, for example, an app for wherever, it's like, no, one payment when you download it or wherever, that's your business. It's like super clear that they're not doing anything with that. The same for other marketplaces or big platforms where the unit economics make you feel that they're doing something strange, right? So I'm very I really think that design ethics are connected to the business model itself of what you're trying to build.
Yeah.
To get a little bit more technical here about some of these features, this is a true 0 to 1. You had a concept and went through the process with your product squad to define what could go into that first version. And now I know you're iteratively working with the team to slowly learn and expand it. But can you share what are some of the discussions that you recall, or what was your experience trying to prioritize from all your ideas of what could go into this app? How did you prioritize only the most critical features to go in the first release?
I think, like I said, we had to obviously have quite a lot of compromises along the way. And I think I've always been of the mentality that I would have rather taken more time to get it right, rather than rush it and get it not quite right. So obviously, as time went on, I think two things really: trusting the engineers to, like, to push the limits in terms of where we could go with something. Obviously trusting the whole process really, because, as I said before, my background isn't tech, but one of the things I had to be true and fastidious about is the feel that I knew that I already had envisioned. So basically just always staying true to my vision. And I knew there were certain things that the app had to tick off in order to be able to solve the problem. So I just never lost sight of that. And anything else, I could compromise on, but just not the pillars, the 4 pillars.
Were there items, pieces of functionality that you can think of that initially were on your wish list, but together you'd all decided to set them aside?
So many, so many. I think that's the reality. You have a little shopping list, and you have your priorities, and then you have all the extra bits that you can have. And there were some times I had to say, to the team, we need to do it. We're going to have to take time, and we're going to all have to wait longer for this to be done, but that needs to be done. And there's other things that we were able just to leave to the side.
I think that's so valuable to understand that so steadfast in your vision, and that this is a journey together. Developing software is difficult and sometimes even emotional. And I think it's important for the team to get themselves and yourself out of your own echo chamber and allow users to help drive some of those decisions. Does that feel like that was part of your experience?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I'm sure that I probably annoyed a lot of the team, but they were so great. And I think, as I said, I think it's all really about communication, and trying to steer to make sure we're not focusing too much on the little things. At the end of the day, does the app do what it's meant to do? Yes. Does it look beautiful? Yes. We've ticked off all the boxes. And I think, from a new person that's new to this whole thing, I think you just have to trust the process. Once you've picked somebody that you have the best intentions. I really enjoyed the fact that when we came across problems, it wasn't just my problem, it was everybody's problem. And that's the main thing. It's not just, oh, this is not working, deal with it. And that's really where all you can ask for, for a collaboration, which is, I've said this a few times to the team, that we have just started. As much as it's taken a long while to get here, we've got so much more to go, and it's going to be fun and exciting. And I think we've just laid such a good foundation for, implementing loads of new ideas and lots of features.
Yeah, I would say that that's connected to the most positive take on the AI disruption, right? Because there are a lot of people are saying like, well, I mean, like AI is increasing efficiency, so we will lose jobs, especially in our industry, right? But then there's a take of, the backlog is always full of things, right? So even if we are increasing efficiency, there will be a ton of things that we want to add to our platforms, products, and everything, right? So it's difficult. It's difficult to say no to some things and to set some time constraints in terms of timelines or budget or just, technical limitations. But it's part of the process, right? Is what it has been validated that sometimes it looks like when you're focusing on the most important elements in a product, things that you thought that were very important at the time passed, you then review it and revisit them and say, oh, actually, this is not very important, right? Or it's not important anymore, right? So you're learning through the process and updating your thoughts on what you need to add, right? But anyway, yeah, that's the whole feeling always, right? Like trying to add more and trying to limit. But I have to say that part of what we try to do always at Set One is to try to limit, to focus on the most important things, but it's not always possible, or is a challenge. I have to say,
Yeah.
Well, as you said, this product is available. People are certainly using it. It is among your peers, Chiara. What can you share about some of the early feedback that you've received?
So I think the response has been really strong. What I've really enjoyed is when I have explained the Applicate concept, it has really resonated with people, which I think is great. I think that people have become conditioned almost to scrolling and using antiquated albums. So I think it will be, really exciting to see which app features stand out and how people, what people really latch onto, and how the early adapters enjoy the features, and see where we go from that, because that will also then affect where we go for our next phases.
Mm-hmm. And there are some user stories in this first version around what I can do in the experience on my mobile device. And then there are other features that exist, but also that you have in mind around collaboration. So maybe share a little bit more about where you think this could go in terms of collaboration.
Yeah, so as we talked about earlier, you can send individual images, via the usual links like copy link and WhatsApp and emails. But within the smart folders, you can add collaborators. So that can be somebody sharing your folder, which would be a group of friends, family, or work team, and they can have different permissions. So that person will either be able to edit or view, or just view and delete. And again, it's just effortless. So we have a system where if you add a photograph to that shared folder, you would get a notification, and we have a little news feed in the app. So it's all super easy to share with whoever you fancy.
Now, I know you've been very thoughtful about your launch campaign and your go-to-market strategy, and Z1, after the initial launch, is continuing to support you in amplification and building awareness. What are some of the next things that you're thinking of for expanding your presence?
Well, we've got lots of plans. I'm mega excited about them. I think the main thing, not to give too much away, is that we would be working to the B2B space and looking at the pro user experience. And that's part of the reason why the app's free at the moment, because I think that it's a, as a base, that's a great tool, great system. And then we'll be looking at monetization in the pro user space.
Very good. Well, I am delighted to see your journey thus far. As you said, it's just at the beginning. I know you have so many ideas. If people want to learn more about Applicate, to learn more about you, connect with you, where would you recommend they go?
Well, at the moment we have got the main website, which is the applicate.biz, and we've got LinkedIn, and we're on Instagram.
Very good. So I hope that this becomes a super mainstream product. I encourage everybody to check everything out with Applicate. Okay. Chiara, thank you so much for sharing some of the pains, some of the excitement, some of the points in your journey. I think it's really valuable for people to hear some of the realities of the conversation and how to get to this first point, and then how to think beyond. So I thank you so much for joining us today. And Hector as well. Great.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.